Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Backstage Bikini podcast. Jesus, I couldn't even get it out. We're at the end of the year. What the actual hell? So, for anybody who's been listening since November, when we first launched our first ever episode, we are at the back end of a whole year where myself and Grace have been putting all of the things that we so desperately wanted to put out into this world in terms of information, sharing insights, sharing conversations, bringing people together. So this is a bit of a wrap up. It's a bit of a girly chat. We're just going to have a bit of a catch up with you guys in terms of what we've been doing this year, because it's been a bit of a ride, a little bit of a ride. But Grace, like, can you believe we're a year in?
It still hasn't hit me that we're in December, and I keep getting the memories up on my phone on Instagram of like the podcast that we did.
Yeah.
And like, what the hell? It's been a full year of it. We were doing the Olympia this time last year because it was in December, the
Yeah.
Olympic review, which is just mental. But yeah, you said it there yourself. It's been a roller coaster for the two of us, and I know a lot of people have been following our journeys the last year, and it's had a lot of similarities in some ways, like the ups and the downs. Like it hasn't been smooth sailing, but I feel like the end of the year, better late than ever, but both we've both come
We
around
got there.
within ourselves. And yeah, 2023 has just been mental. But like, aside from the kind of lows, like there's been so many highs with
Yeah.
this podcast. And I think I'm sure people listening have found like it's almost been a little bit of an outlet for both Jade and I, but also for you listening. And when there's things kind of going on, personally, it's just been so nice to come on and chat and have these conversations and just get really, really passionate about the sport. So the podcast has definitely been my highlight of this year, and the conversations and stuff, and just so grateful for everybody who's been tuning in and made this podcast what it was, and even chatting to us on Instagram. Like, it's been so nice to form a relationship with people and a little community. So yeah, it's been a big highlight of the year.
It's just so crazy, isn't it? I think for me personally, like, obviously, I was actually listening back to our sort of introduction. Do you remember doing that, Grace? Oh my God, the introduction podcast. It was the most awkward 30 minutes of our entire existence. It was so difficult. But I listened back to it, and I listened back to some of our solo casts and things like that. And even listening to where we are now with the podcast personally in our own sort of athletic sort of positions in terms of competing, whether we are, whether we're not, we'll get into it. But just listening back to those people as well, I feel like we as a pair have gotten so much back from speaking to the people that we have on this podcast. I mean, it's been a huge lifeline for me anyway, keeping me connected to the sport. But I know, speaking to so many listeners as well, you guys have felt the same. And I think being able to share that sort of environment for people whilst they're going through life stuff as well, but then also putting across our life stuff, because it's hard, isn't it? It's hard sharing it, because let's face it, guys, like, you're listening to sort of the bare bones of some of our emotions sometimes. So it's nice to have created a space for people to bring their life into this as well. It's not just how the sport might be impacting them, but how that might spill out into just day to day, because you're a human first, rather than just being an athlete and a robot. But yeah, highlights of the podcast. Let's start there.
Okay, so I think I said it before, but Maureen's podcast really, really hit me. And not just because she's Miss Bikini Olympia, but her view on the sport and her prep just changed a lot of things for me and how I viewed it. Now, obviously, like, she's the most elite athlete you can get, and genetics obviously play a role. But I think I was really, really inspired by how she went about her prep, like still socializing and stuff. And I finished my prep this time last year roughly, and I was in a really, really difficult place. And I always looked at people who were able to have a little bit more balance on a prep and do things, and I feel like I struggled a lot because I cut myself off so much. And just, I suppose, Maureen's stance on it all I found really, really inspiring. And I thought, if I was to ever do a prep again, I need to take a little bit of that, because I've seen so many people, including myself, who do shut off a lot on prep and don't socialize and become very, very robotic in nature, and they cut a lot of friends off. And I personally don't think that that's the healthiest thing to do, and that's just my view.
Yeah,
So I always thought like, right, if Miss Bikini Olympia is at the top of her game and she's able to do that, like, why can't I?
exactly.
I don't think you need to be that kind of person and lose a lot of your friends and not see your family and not go out and just be in your own bubble. Like, that's cool if you do, but I don't think it's necessary for everybody. And not even Maureen, but I think a lot of other athletes, like even Phoebe Hagen that we had on, like, I think just chatting to all those like top pros just give me a really, really big insight into like what is actually okay to do.
What's
Um,
necessary? Yeah,
if you like, I think you put them on a pedestal and you think that they do all of these things, and like the conversations, we never have never heard them before with these top athletes, and being able to have them was just incredible. Phoebe Hagen is one of them, and Maureen, and then obviously Amy Delgado. I know she had a different view on it, but I've been taking little bits from them, I suppose.
yeah.
And yeah, just taking it into my own journey, but that's definitely been the highlight. And I suppose just speaking to these names is just surreal.
It's
Like,
the fact is,
it's just so mad. Like any of these big names, like obviously I learned so much
yeah.
through all the episodes I can apply to my journey, but it's actually speaking to these athletes in person.
Hmm.
Like you always say, like they are human at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So yeah, I suppose that has been my favorite episode.
100%. Oh, mine. Okay. Do you know what? I think more so now than ever, I think Angelica's was mine. I mean, you probably would have been able to tell anybody watching the YouTube. I don't think I wiped a smile off my face the entire time. So I was fangirling pretty hard. But I think like personally as well, I've always been I've never had the pro status as a goal, only because I think I've undermined, like, not take my physique away from it, okay, like let's be objective like about that, because obviously from a potential standpoint that's a different matter, but the self-belief in myself in terms of like pushing myself and actually committing to really pushing for that goal, even though I can go in and I'm always 150% on 90% of things. Anyone who knows me personally, I'm all in or I'm not at all anyway. But I do struggle to commit my mind to pursuing a goal in case I fail. So, and it's a big self-confidence thing. It's a big barrier for me. It's a big sort of self-esteem thing. And that took a huge hit over the last year, stepping away from bodybuilding, sort of not being able to feel like I could do both. If I wasn't all in bodybuilding, then I was failing at that. And I took a lot of responsibility on personally. So listening to Angelica's sort of journey and listening to what she actually did, into it wasn't even the practicalities of it. It wasn't even the fact that she kept showing up. She just didn't give up on herself. So I think it was that for me, that's probably been the most profound conversation I've had, because it made me look at how I treat my own goals and how I treat myself when I'm pursuing a goal as well. Like there's so much apprehension, there's so much sort of fear of sort of falling out of something and looking like a bit of an idiot. And listening to her conviction in herself to
Mhm.
just keep going, and they kept changing the goalposts all the time, like it wasn't easy for her, and they kept redirecting her saying, you just have to do this, you just have to do that. And I think it takes a level of self-belief and conviction in yourself, and I don't know, just a commitment to honoring what you want and your beliefs in yourself to actually get where she got. So yeah, that was huge for me. I mean, Maureen, Amy, Paul Ravella, like all those conversations, the names, like they spill out of my mouth and I'm like, what on earth? Like I haven't spoken to these people. Adam.
Yeah,
So
crazy.
it's yeah, it shook me. But I think from a personal standpoint, that conversation really made me look at myself and how I was talking to myself around not just competing, but just in general.
Mm,
And whether that was actually a debilitating thing for me, because look at what she had to overcome. She didn't give up on herself. So having that conversation shone a pretty
yeah.
large light on the fact that I don't do it.
But like she's making a comeback now. She's listed
Oh,
Reynolds in March, and I'm just like, we had the conversation with her, like, was she going to return after baby? We had no idea what was
no.
happening there, and like that is such a big comeback as well. Like to
Yeah.
have a child and to obviously be a little bit older, but like Bikini has evolved, and she's just coming back, and she's like, yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like badass, and
Yeah.
you're
It's
making a
insane.
turn as well, hopefully. So it's like you're in sync. Maybe
Literally.
not post
So
baby, but
basically, I'm now channeling myself through Angelica. That's
Yeah,
the way it's gonna work. She
love
comes
it.
back, I come back. Okay. I just
Um,
don't have babies. She has 2 more mouths to feed. God help her.
Yeah, that's another level, honestly. But and Marnie's conversation has kind of particularly hit me a lot, because I know that she had a really, really tough time with her previous coach, and I've actually been chatting to her a bit recently, and the place that she was in before actually the podcast that we recorded, she started with Jade. And I think seeing where she came from to winning her pro card, we need to get her on to chat about that and everything.
Yes, we do.
But the place that she was in, and she wanted to quit bodybuilding, and then she came back and she still made loads of progress and earned her pro card, and she's just like a different person now. And I think sometimes you see the tip of the iceberg, you see the achievements, and it's like being able to have these conversations, you can see that, like, no, everybody goes through like a good chunk of their journey where they question everything and the love falls for it, and maybe some progress slips because they're not motivated to train, maybe diet slips a little bit, but ultimately it's how you come back from that. That's the most important thing. And nobody's journey is smooth sailing as well. So I've been really, really inspired by Marnie in particular as well, and because she's so like close to us, and she's done a lot for the podcast, big supporter. And I've loved watching her journey since I before I even stepped on stage. I've been inspired by her and watching her do everything. And I think a massive highlight as well was being asked to go to her
Seminar.
Yeah, that was like really, really surreal. And I know for you it kind of put a lot into perspective about our journeys and how much we knew and how much we'd built up, and I suppose respect to a degree, which is always nice. Like, you sometimes doubt yourself. So that was just so surreal. So that moment,
It was huge. And I think when we sat down in a coffee shop and had our notepads out and we're like, right, okay, where are we? Because we want to do this. Let's spitfire ideas. And we just joined in the middle so easily. We were on the same page immediately. But at that point, like, when I say that was a wish list, like, that was a crazy wish list. We literally said, in the best case scenario, who are the types of people we want conversations with? And it is wild to know that we have actually hit those names in our first year. So I think it put a lot of perspective, being invited to the seminar, having the guests that we've been absolutely honored. There's nothing less than honor and gratitude to have these types of people on the podcast. I think it's a testament as well to us actually going after what we wanted. And we sort of, I mean, we said, didn't we, Dan, we've peaked now with Maureen, like, where on earth are we going to go from here?
Yeah, literally.
So
God.
We've almost been chasing our tails with this podcast. It's we've ran with it, but it's ran faster than we ever thought it would do. So from a reflection standpoint, so proud of it.
There's a lot, like, I think there's a lot I've learned from getting the guests that we've had on, in terms of like the amount of times we would like screenshot the message of them reply and be like, wait, what are they actually happening? And one thing I kept saying to myself was like, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
And I think you can apply that so much to just like, absolutely, like those moments I've been able to put into practice in so many other areas of my life, because I'm like, if you don't try, if you don't ask, you're just never gonna know. And I think you can apply that to everything, and it's given me a massive boost of confidence in myself, being like, okay, right, if I want to do this next year, like, I need to just go for it. What's the
I'm
worst
capable.
that can happen?
Yeah,
like, with the guests, like, what's the worst that can happen? They don't reply, but at least I've tried. At least we've reached out. And I think so many people can take that with them, like, in everything I do. And that's what builds confidence as well. Like, when you get those things back, you're like, oh my God, like, what have I got to lose? Really,
exactly. And it boils back to that conviction, doesn't it? Like, it's a case of, right, if you want that, are you honestly going to get in your own way to go and achieve it? And we didn't. We just asked. And it, like, guys, literally, it was as simple as sliding into people's DMs. Like, it was that simple. And it's
like twice or three times. I'm like, doesn't
quite a few.
Doesn't even matter. But it's been incredible anyways. And I suppose where we've both come from this time last year, like, totally different people. Like, 2023 has shaped up us in so many ways. I think looking back now, like, I'm really, really grateful for the shit moments, because we've both come full circle. Like, definitely our lives aren't perfect, but I think we can say that it's a lot better than it has been, which is nice.
We're ending an update. Should
Yeah.
we do updates?
Let's
Oh,
do a little
yeah.
I feel like everybody
I
is so
know.
intrigued as to what we're doing next year. Are we competing? I want to go through kind of how the year has looked for both Jade and I, in terms of our like mini cuts, working with coaches, my breast augmentation, all that kind of stuff, and our plans for 2024, which will be
Oh,
exciting outside of
I
the podcast.
can't wait.
Yes.
I can't wait. Yeah, I mean, my 2023, I mean, I've been quite transparent about it in terms of sort of family turmoil is the word. Maybe it's just been hard. It's been hard. But it's nothing that people don't face. But I think the regularity of the incidents that I was facing, like obviously everyone knows that I pulled away from bodybuilding. I put on, I think it was about 19, 20 kilos, something around that mark. Up from stage weight anyway. I was like just under 80 kilo, and that's the heaviest I've ever been in my entire life. And it was incredibly like, it wasn't at the time. I thought like I just need to get in shape, so I'm just going to do that. So my year's been around me trying to put myself back in a position where I can actually move productively from that spot. And I just wasn't in a productive spot sort of the start end of the year. A holiday abroad, like getting into a bikini is always a motivator. So that was my initial motivator. And my body just wasn't responding at all. I really had to dig for that mini cut that I did and to get some of the weight off. And it was incredibly hard. And I just thought, God, like, am I ever going to be able to bodybuild again? Like I can't diet without slashing my calories like sub 1,000. So it was a bit crazy, a bit wild. And I wasn't sure at the time whether I would ever be in a position to be where I am now, where I am working with a coach. A lot of it as well boiled down to sort of trusting a coach again and letting that element of my life back in where my responsibility to show up would be accounted for. Like I'd have somebody to be accountable to. But I definitely needed somebody who was sort of, for me personally, I needed somebody who would accept me as a whole as opposed to just an athlete, who would accept me with the understanding that I know my own body, I know my own limits. And if I come to you and say that I'm at my limit at this point in time, there's some movement, there's some acknowledgement of that there. That was such an important thing for me to be able to trust a coach going forward in order to do this. So, but I have got a new coach. Anybody on my Instagram will have seen him tagged in it already. But I'm working with Jake Watts now, and it's just going incredibly well. Like even taking my body back to like structured dieting and structured training, like my weight stayed stable. If anything, it was dropping the more food we went in. And I spoke to Jake and I was like, I'm really concerned at this point that my body is that broken, that I've just mistreated it for such a long time, that you start putting food in and it's going to start spiraling out a little bit. And it just didn't happen that way. So I think a lot of that's to do with timing for me. I think it was the right time, the right decision. I'd worked through not all, but the majority of sort of the emotional things that I was dealing with through that year. And it got to a point where it was actually bringing substance back into my life, the thought of training again and structuring my sort of lifestyle around wanting to step on stage again. I just simply didn't have the room at the start of the year, but having that now,
Yeah, well, that's what I
yes.
was gonna ask was like when you were, I suppose, like you said, when you were that 80 like nearly 80 kilos, like did you think at that point like I do want to compete again? Like was there ever a doubt in your head where it was like, am I just too
Oh,
far gone, or like I don't trust my body anymore, I don't know it's going to corroborate? Like were those thoughts kind of in your head?
massively. I didn't know whether I ever wanted to compete again at that point. More so than ever as well. Like it was the training as well. I wasn't enjoying it at that point. I started doing like different types of classes, like HIIT classes. Don't know whether ever anybody's heard of Barry's, but I was doing Barry's classes, and a lot of it had to do with my mindset. Like my mind was busy. My mind was so chaotic at that time. Any personal time, I just couldn't sit still and I couldn't sit in my own mind. So even training, like having an hour, 2 hours training in a gym on my own was too quiet for me. And my brain was just overactive. So at that point, certainly, I remember one of my friends turned around to me and said, I am really scared that you're never going to come back to this. And I really didn't know whether I was going to. I didn't know whether I would find the love for training again, whether I could manage my own sort of stresses and the impact of like sort of my dad's health and things like that. I didn't know whether I would ever have a moment to myself in my own mind where I could be quiet enough to dedicate that time to myself, because it only worked at that point unless somebody was screaming at me, telling me to like up the tempo on a treadmill or something like that. So, or do burpees. Burpees are the worst, but yeah. it
So do you
was
think
that
the
it
mini
served a
cut,
purpose.
mini
Huh?
cut, if do you think the mini cut is kind of what got, and like seeing that progress again and knowing that you can actually respond, and now working with Jake, is that kind of what's just like lit the fire in you again, that you actually can do this?
Yeah. I think the mini cut still put a little bit of a doubt in my mind because it was so aggressive. Like I was doing an hour's worth of cardio. I was training 5 times a week. My calories were slashed. I was under 1,000 calories. And then on the way out of that as well, I didn't have an appetite. I was struggling to get meals in. And even up until as recently as a couple of weeks ago, really, that's still impacting me now. Like appetite for me is a big, usually my stress response is to go to food. I'm quite a foodie. I'm quite an emotional eater in that respect. But because of I can only imagine it's the volume of stress that I've had to deal with recently. My body's definitely reacted in a different fashion, sort of the back end of the year, and it just doesn't want me to. Like I just don't have any motivation to eat. So having that structure in place now, I think with all of those factors considered, obviously I got myself to a place where I actually felt more comfortable in my body. I could see my body for what it was. And it was just a case of, I still want to do this. I still want to do this. And it feels more realistic now than it did 6-7 months ago to be able to achieve it. And like I said, the distraction, it's not a distraction as such or an escape from my own sort of mindset. I've had a lot of work to do this year on that. So I think because of that work, I've created space in my own mind again to make room for this.
Yeah.
I put it all down to up here, all up here.
I would say is like, I'm sure people listening have gone through a lot of personal things like
Yeah.
that you can't control, like, you
Mm.
know, if something happens with your family or a relationship. And I think it's very, very easy, like you said, to use this lifestyle and bodybuilding as that kind of band-aid and stuff. But it
Yeah.
takes a lot of mental work to be like, to recover from or to heal from all of that other stuff. But then
Mm.
look at bodybuilding as a really, really healthy thing and a healthy anchor. I think once
Yeah.
you, that's the right decision, that's the main thing, as long as it's not a distraction and you're
Yeah.
like what Chris Bumstead said, you know, that you're not numbing
Mm.
all of these things, is that you're
Yeah.
actually facing them, and that you're using bodybuilding as a positive outlet, something to add to your life as well.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Because the numbing wasn't working. No, that's a lie. The numbing was Barry's classes. The numbing
yeah.
was having somebody scream at me in a high intensity workout
Mm,
class. Well, that was the numbing for me at that point. This simply wasn't, this space wasn't a sanctuary for me in any way, shape, or form. If anything, it exasperated how I was feeling. So I think having that reflection and understanding that if the two are off, like it directly impacted my bodybuilding for me. Like I couldn't make space for it because I couldn't allow myself the mental freedom to
mm,
actually apply myself to it properly. So it made a lot of sense for me, not necessarily at the time, but looking back at it now and looking at the types of things that I've had to do to try and get myself in this place now, it's all been mental for me. And I've made the mistake before. I've made the mistake of sort of using a prep as a band-aid and things like that. So I think again, history, sort of experiences and things like that, I have that reference point,
yeah.
whereas some people might not. So again, it's like, what's the right or the wrong thing to do? I think you can only make a judgment call based on your experiences, your references, and how you're feeling in the minute. But for me right now, this is the best time, and I don't think I could have done it any sooner. I
Yeah,
truly do not.
yeah. But this is what I
But
always
yeah.
say, is I think when you can work on all those other aspects of your life, and you're gonna always then come back to your values and what you actually truly love.
Yeah.
And you've worked on all of that, and now you're at a place where like, I have the space for
Mm-hmm.
bodybuilding now.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
you're like you said, you've worked on all of those other things, that this isn't a band-aid, that it's actually something
No.
that you want to do, and you know
Yeah.
that for sure. And I think that's the
Yeah.
main thing.
Yeah. And I think I posted about it recently. It was, and I said that bodybuilding for me, returning to competing, is simply not about the physique anymore. It used to be, very much used to be driven by it. And obviously I'm not taking away the fact that it is a physique sport, but I have removed so much of the things in my life that make me happy, not intentionally, not to like sort of deprive myself or anything like that. But in the last year, there's so much of the things that I love doing and the things that I feel make me me and make me a better person and add value, like you said, Grace, to your life. I've stripped all of that back because I didn't think that I could have them
Mm,
whilst pouring my 150% into my family and where I needed to support other people. And it's not for a long time, I thought it was one or the other. So I've learned a hard lesson that I can't pour into those people unless I'm pouring into myself. And again, it's one of those things that you don't realize until you are empty. You're at the bottom of a barrel and you're clawing yourself out and you haven't got any sustenance left. You haven't got anything to get you out of that barrel because you've spent it all. So for me as well, it was like, I'm coming back to bodybuilding because it's what I love doing. It's what drives me. It's what motivates me. It's what makes me me. It scratches an itch in terms of like my ability to not sit still, and I've got to keep going for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Like I'm constantly like that. So physique aside, this is a huge apology to myself for taking away something that gives me purpose, because I need it in order to spill back into the people that I love and the people that I care about. I need to be whole in order to do that for them, because they're getting less of me and I'm getting less of me, and it's a vicious circle. But yeah.
No, purpose is like the perfect word to use. And I said it on podcasts all the time, like your purpose might change now and again. Like who knows, in 2025, it might be a different thing, but you found it now and you know that right now at the end of 23 and going into 2024, that is your purpose and that's what you want to focus on.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is that like you've gone through all that this year to get to that point.
100%.
And I
know really want to compete.
cringy, but like the quote that like just always still sticking to me is like, what's for you won't pass you. And I think I've been through so much this year, and that like that quote has just been so true, because I'm like, you sometimes all these things happen to you and you're like, why me, or why this, like, that, and you're like, no, it's meant to happen. It really is. It's bringing you to that point,
more aligned to who you are and what you're about. But no, to sum up mine before we catch up with you, I definitely want to compete next year. Like that is on the cards. It is.
I think everybody knew that because from your Instagram.
Yeah, anybody who's watching the Instagram will know. But yeah, it's 1000%. All things permitted.
So do we have any
step on
dates in
stage
mind for prep starting? I'm sure everybody listening is eager to know.
Nothing solidified at all. Nothing solidified. If at all, it's probably going to be the back end of the year.
Yeah,
it's probably going to be the back end of the year.
MPC in September, 2 rows.
Yeah, exactly.
London.
So there's quite a few that I'm looking at. Sort of around September, October time. I've not firmed up any dates at all with Jake, not even remotely tried to. We were just trying to get food in a good spot, bodies responding in a really positive way. So everything looks like it would be very practical to do it. Nothing about the way that things are going at the minute is a disastrous red flag. So
love it.
Fingers crossed.
It's going to be end of year, like I'd say April, May prep.
Probably. Much. Yeah, probably just before summer. Yeah, exciting. Tell us about you though.
I'm
Secret
like,
squirrel.
I should have kept a diary, because like the roller coaster, I wish it was like not smooth sailing, but I just wished I had
wasn't that
idea
rough.
of actually what happened. But I spoke about it similar on my solo cast, I think, that I did at some stage this year. Struggled really, really heavily with my body image, probably the worst I have in my entire life.
Yeah.
From when I finished my prep, but it kind of got really bad coming into the new year, and I had to start working with another coach. And yeah, from like January to April, I struggled really, really heavily with my body image, to the point that, not to go into details, you can listen to the other podcasts, but I would cry numerous times a day about my body. I couldn't wear certain clothes. I lost all confidence. And like thinking back now, I'm trying not to get emotional, because I'm like so far away from that now. I just want to give that Grace a hug. But it was just not a good time. And I feel like I look back at that and I'm like, that's a totally different person. But it was really difficult. And I started working with Nathan Styles in February, March. I was to do a mini cut, but when I started working with him, knee injuries started to pop up that I knew were kind of there from preps and stuff and just squatting ridiculously. And that knee injury put me back in training a lot. Intensity wise, couldn't do hip thrusts, couldn't do split squats, struggled to get my steps in, struggled to do cardio. And so the mini cut we were trying to do just wasn't very successful. So throughout all that, I was still really, really struggling with my body. I was at my heaviest body composition ever. And alongside that, I couldn't train as well. So I did find that quite hard. So I stopped working with Nate and I decided to get my boobs done because
Hey.
I've been out of training all year, so I might as well just take another 2 months off. But that was the kind of logic behind it, was that I knew I had to recover from this knee injury and I had to take time off training to try and do this rehab. I was going to physios and stuff. Got to a point that some days I actually couldn't even walk. The pain was so bad. So I took the time off training and I was like, right, I'll just get my boobs done a little
Why
bit
not?
later, because why not? And I always wanted them done for personal reasons, actually, so far beyond competing. And yeah, so I was out of training for 2 months, and I actually got a few questions on Instagram asking about that. And you'd be surprised when you're training like consistently throughout the year, like you're actually quite thankful for a little bit of a break. So I
Yeah.
was only off training for leg training for about 4 weeks. And you kind of just want to sit and do nothing. I didn't actually struggle that much with not training. I think
Mm.
it's the latter end, you were just kind of itching. But I
Get back.
it was summer, I was enjoying Love Island, and I actually didn't mind being out of training for quite some time. But um I was still actually struggling a lot with my body image, which
Yeah. Yeah.
just not great. And throughout, I suppose, the first half of this year, I was like definitely not competing anymore. And
No.
I I was at such a bad place with my body. I was like, I don't know if competing again is actually going to help this. I
Yeah.
was doing a lot of mental work. I was going to a lot of therapy. I was working with different coaches, and just my own work. And I just thought that competing didn't have a place because it was so bad at this
Mm.
point in time. And I just wanted to get to a composition that I was really, really happy in year round, and that I didn't
Mm.
struggle with my body. So after I got my boobs done, I kind of didn't track, and I was just training out of enjoyment. This is a very, very long tangent because I'm
No,
so
no, but it helps because all of that background, like it contributes. Because one of my
yeah
glaring questions is like, obviously having breast augmentation, like again, that shifts your body image, like it shifts what you look like and your perception of your body. So whilst you're in the mix of all of this, like adding something that you wanted and you wanted for a long time, that's still going to feel like a shift.
yeah. And anybody who's got the boobs done knows how mad your body is when it actually happens. You
Yeah.
swell just horrendously, like, and you don't even look like you train anymore. So you're dealing with all of that.
On
uh
top of the fact that you were feeling that way anyway.
Yeah, so getting back to training was fine. And I suppose I just want to give context, because when people hear like what my plans are for 2024, like it all kind of makes sense. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, I got the breast augmentation. I was out of training for 6 weeks, and I was still really, really struggling with my body image over
Mm.
summer until about August or September, where I went through the biggest life change ever. And
Yeah.
I've no problem saying it, because he said it himself on different platforms. But yeah, I've went through a breakup after 7.5 years of being together. So it was a massive turn in the other direction, because my introduction to bodybuilding was through my other half,
Mm.
my ex, and it just made me question a lot of things. I was like you, Jade. I was turning to different things. I wanted to do running. I've started
Yeah.
boxing, and
I'll try anything.
try anything, because it is like a bit of an escape. You're like, right, I
Yeah.
associate this with this. I want to run so far away from that.
Yeah.
And I moved home, and yeah, things have just been very, very different to how they were 6 months ago. But like you, Jade, I've kind of come back around, healed a lot of parts of me, and reevaluated and all that kind of stuff, and
Mm.
kind of coming to terms with everything and what I want again.
Mm.
So I have also started working with Jake
Babies.
last month, because I want to do a diet in January, but I don't know if I will compete again. So that's where I'm
Mhm.
kind of getting at with this. I don't think, like you said at the start of the year, Jade, about like plans not going to plan. I think sometimes it's okay to not have a plan. I think
Yeah.
it's okay to not know. I said this before on Instagram, like we're always chasing goals and what's next and having a clear cut timeline. But like it's totally okay if you don't know, because
Mm.
things in life happen that might throw you off and make you reevaluate things, and push you to learn who you are again. And that's what the
Mm.
last couple of months have been about for me, is kind of just understanding who Grace actually is, outside of the relationship, and just, yeah, rediscovering myself and realigning with who I really am. Because when
Yeah.
you're in a relationship for so long, you lose that a little bit. So I spent a little bit of time doing that, and I know that my passion actually does still lie with bodybuilding. Whether or not the stage is included in that, I don't know. I think you can still be a bodybuilder and still live this lifestyle,
Mhm.
still be as dedicated without stepping on stage. So that's kind of where I'm at with things. I love photo shoots and I love prepping, but I don't know if I want to ever go back to the extremes of stepping on stage again, because
Yeah.
of the difficulty that I had with my body image this year, and because of
Mhm.
how good of a place I am with my body right now.
Yeah.
That I'm genuinely so happy and comfortable wearing certain clothes that I could never wear at the start of this year.
Mhm.
Um, Stress is a lot lower and my body is really, really feeling that. I feel sexier, like all of these different things. And I just don't know if stepping on stage is worth sacrificing all of that. And that's
Yeah.
just my personal experience
Yeah.
of things. And I think competing impacts people in different ways. Some people it
Yeah.
really impacts their food relationship, their, family relationship, like loads of different things. And for me, it was my body, and I thought I could never come back from that. And
Mhm.
I'm at a place that I have come back from that. And I just think whether or not I feel like a state like competing is going to align with that, I don't know, but I do love prepping. So I will be not competing, I will be doing a photo shoot prep in January with all of
Exciting.
clients, because I love photo shoots and I love the look of them, and I love that
Yeah.
you to get as lean. And my goal working with Jake, and the reason why I started working with Jake is because he has quite a nice lifestyle approach. Is he is obviously a bodybuilding prep coach, but he was a lifestyle coach first.
Mhm.
It's a very, very compassionate approach. And I just found like I'm sitting in the middle of that now, in that
Yeah.
I the lifestyle, and I eat the same meals and I train and I still want to build a bikini physique, and I love dieting and all that kind of thing. But whether or not I want to like push to that like very last end where I know that my body image can be impacted, I don't know. So I'm going to push for a photo shoot prep, and that's my goals going into 2024.
That's
But quite
exciting.
winded one.
No, 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 but it makes all the sense in the world, because like at the end of the day, I'm looking back at my year now, and that's exactly where I've been. Like not having a plan is actually quite liberating to a degree. It gives you a little bit of space for those things to gravitate back to you. And again, like that's very much how I feel like I've found this again. I didn't force it. I couldn't. I simply didn't have the space. And you're the same, Grace. At the end of the day, you finally got yourself in a position where you are comfortable, you are satisfied, you are happy, you feel sexy, you feel good about yourself. You have to look at your options and your choices, and ask yourself whether it's worth sacrificing the position you're in now. And we boil back to what you said earlier, and I said it has to add to your life. Yes,
Mm,
it takes a lot in terms of dedication, commitment, things like that. But if that in itself, if that approach, if that lifestyle isn't adding value to your life, you have to look at why.
mm,
And
yeah.
to be able to do that, and to be able to sit objectively in that decision and say, don't know right now, maybe not, but right now my priority is protecting the space that I've created for myself. You can't want anything more for yourself, really
Mm.
can't.
Percent. I
It'll
don't
be
think a lot of
exciting.
people, like I said at the start, when we're chatting to these athletes, like a lot of people speak about the personal things that kind of go on in the background that really influence your decisions to bodybuild and step on stage. And like breakups are a big, big thing to go through, because you're grieving. And
Mm-hmm.
um for me, like trying to find myself again, and without sounding too cringy, but like trying to just rediscover who you are and your values and what you want. And I think a prep sometimes can kind of just be I suppose like a mask, but it's also when you're when you're single, it's not
No, it's not the nicest
you want,
thing.
because like you're
No.
already, I suppose, I'm, going out with my friends again, and a prep kind of cuts you off from a life a
Yeah.
lot more. And
Yeah.
I think that's the opposite of what you need to do when you come out of a relationship. I think you need to live your life a little bit more, or my
Reignite
I
things.
felt. And
Mm.
I'm loving, being with my friends and all that kind of thing. And Look, never say never. I don't like saying that. Jake is still trying to push me. I don't know if you'll
That
watch this, but he's like
there's
in the
he
background.
might.
Look, I'm still doing my bikini poses and stuff, and I still act like I'm stepping on stage. I'm like, oh, look at the glutes, look at the tie, like because I love it. Like I'm so
Yeah.
about it, and that's never gonna leave. Um, but whether or not, like I said, I push for that like last little bit of condition. I just don't know. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, never say never. Still
Stay
young.
tuned more than anything. Stay tuned for
I
next
know. And I
year.
think you just gotta everybody listening, like whether or not you have plans or not for next year, you just gotta take every single day as it comes, every single week as
Yeah.
it comes, because things can change in an instant and you have to be willing to kind of adapt. And you change as a person and that's totally okay as well. But not
Mm.
put any,
Yeah.
pressure on yourself or not be angry at yourself if you don't, I suppose, get to a place you thought you were going to
Follow
be
through.
and
Yeah.
you haven't failed.
No.
And I know a lot of people, listening to this and have been following me since I started competing, like I don't feel like I failed if I don't step on stage again. I think it's just a
No.
natural progression of life.
Yeah.
I've been prepping for the last like 4 years beyond this year, and it's like sometimes that's the end of it. It might not
Hmm.
be, but I don't think anybody should feel bad if they take another route, I suppose,
Yeah. And take a break.
certain
Yeah.
episode with
I think we can both sort of hold a torch for taking steps away sometimes. Like it doesn't have to be a permanent fixture. Nothing is. Absolutely no decision you make, or very few decisions you make. I won't say no, or none, but very few decisions you make have permanent outcomes. And I think if you approach this with as much fluidity as you would do choices you made about food and perhaps what you're in the mood for when you go to a restaurant, if you're that fluid with competing as well and plans, like it takes the pressure off massively. Because as I've said, the pressure of not being able to fulfill the things that I knew that I had to fulfill in the situation that I was in at the time, with the coach that I was in at the time, not being able to achieve those things, the damage that had on my self-esteem and my confidence and things like that, and my conviction in this sport, it completely ruined it all. Because I allowed that to be the most important thing. So I think fluidity and just a little bit more of an open mind really approaching anything, not just bodybuilding, but approaching bodybuilding as well. Like you're a human being first,
yeah.
and then you're an athlete second. And well, it might not even be second. You'll be a sister, daughter, whatever else after that. So yeah, it's always going to be there. Cliche as hell, but it's not wrong. It's
Yeah,
not
no,
wrong.
you're dead right.
Yeah.
And I want to give a special shout out to Jake. I've only been working with him for like 3 weeks, but
Yeah.
he coaches a lot of people who listen to this podcast. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
well known in the bikini space in the UK. He's someone that I actually didn't even think I'd be working with at all.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but I'm so thankful for his support, and I just want to give him a massive shout out because he's not only helped me like get back up off my feet and into bodybuilding again, but he's helping me a lot with my hormonal health.
Yeah.
And he reached out to me off the back of the podcast that we did with Dean St. Mart. And we were just chatting back and forth about our hormones. And I think as well, like you said, you're human first and an athlete
Mm-hmm.
second, like your health is also number one.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm massively putting at the forefront. Next year, he's
Mm-hmm.
helping me get back to put a long story short, into a very healthy, natural range for my testosterone levels, and my
Yeah.
thyroid and stuff. So I'm really, really looking forward to that journey and what we can do together. And his support has just been incredible. Like
Unwavering. Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
he is
Can't
my
speak highly.
fourth coach now since I started. So, but the last 5 years, I was obviously working with Cal for 3 years. I know you're working with Meg for a good chunk of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So experiencing something different and having that level of support and understanding, it's just really refreshing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's
I
really
think Jake is is extremely holistic in terms of his approach. And I think going back to my choices in terms of choosing a coach as well, that was such a huge driver for me. His attention to detail beyond just the physique and beyond the diet and beyond the training and things like that. Like I've watched him at shows, I've watched how he conducts himself from a psychological support standpoint, and just his commitment is to so much more than just the physique that he presents on stage. He wants his athletes as whole as they practically can be, and the support that he gives in order to create a space where that person can be as whole as possible. Like I couldn't have gone anywhere else. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
Having watched how he conducts himself as a coach, like he knows what I think of him anyway. But yeah, the respect that I have.
What we said about values,
Yeah,
finding those values again.
yeah,
Since I went through what I went through, like just assessing a lot of life things and health things and things that happen with competing and certain substances and stuff, like I've really connected with his opinion on things a lot more.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
and I respect it a lot, and I love what he does with his bikini athletes, and I agree wholeheartedly with his approach and his stance on that, because it's very, very easy in this space, we talk about it on podcasts all the time, to take advantage of female health.
Yeah.
I just really, really appreciated his take on it, and I agree with it. And it aligns with my values, and I suppose
Yeah.
that's really important when you are choosing a coach, that you don't choose somebody just because of what you see, their results, or the name that they are, but do they align with your beliefs and what you
Yeah.
think is right morally.
Mhm.
In this case, it was just female health and hormones and stuff. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate what he's done, and look, we're both going to skyrocket working with him, I can imagine.
Oh hell yes. Oh hell
I
yes.
hope you
Yeah,
watch this,
no.
you better get me absolutely massive and peeled and well. You already look incredible, Jade. Like, honestly, I'm so
Oh,
excited. Like,
thank
seeing your
you.
physique shape up and
Yeah.
the fire back in you, like
Mm.
you're just yourself again, which I love to see.
Yeah, 100%. It's wild, isn't it? I've had so many people say things like that to me, and it almost gets me like a little bit, a lot emotional, to be honest. I'm quite an emotional person. But it does get me incredibly emotional, because I think you'll feel it as well, Grace. I think looking back, you said it yourself, you wanted to give that Grace a hug. Like, you look at the pain and the sort of difficulties that you've been carrying, the stress and the turmoil and all of the things like that you've been fighting and battling against in your own space and in your own mind, and coming out of that the other end, like when you're there, you don't feel like that's ever going to happen. You really don't. And I think having any kind of opportunity to reflect back on that from a better space it's heartwarming. It really is. And I couldn't, I mean, from a personal standpoint, and then this podcast, the community, everything, I wouldn't still be looking at doing this if it wasn't for the community that I have had access to over the last year. So thank you to you. Thank you to everybody who's listening. This has been an absolute lifeline. It has been a life raft in my life for like 12 months. So the gratitude that I have, not only for us and what we're doing here and the guests, but actually people bringing it to life. Like, because you've made it possible, you've made it a thing. It's there because
Like
of the
we've
people that are
connected with a lot
engaging.
of people who do this podcast in different ways. Like you said at the start, they understand our journeys and they connect with us, and I feel like we know you guys as well, because you're sharing
Yeah,
your
yeah,
stories and saying how much you love it in certain conversations as well, and we're learning so much about you guys. And I couldn't be thankful for this, because going through my breakup, like having that kind of, I suppose, girly community of people that just get
yeah,
it has been
yeah,
so nice.
yeah. And you're glowing, girl. Look
Every
at that hair. If anybody's on
it's so
YouTube, get
funny.
on YouTube.
It's funny, when we started the podcast, I had brown hair.
I know.
Like, I'm just like, I'm a totally new woman now.
Literally,
Got the beard,
literally.
got the blonde hair. I'm like, yeah,
Move out of the way, guys. She's
literally.
coming.
But no, and
But
I think,
no.
like, looking back, without sounding so cringe, and I've spoke about it on my Instagram a lot, like, you can actually turn things around. Like, when you're at the lowest of the low in your life,
Yeah.
you can turn it around. And I remember I used to read like quotes and stuff and just be like, yeah, whatever, but
Mm.
until you actually go through it, like, you really believe those quotes, and you're like, you can actually get out of that dark place and look back at it and be so thankful for that
Yeah.
place that you're
Yeah.
in. And when you're in the thick of it, you think like, how am I ever going to come out of it? But when you do, you're like, God, I'm so glad I got to that really, really dark place, because it's pushing
Yeah.
me to be better.
Yeah.
Without sounding like,
Yeah. No, but it's right. Yeah. No, I had exactly the same
yeah,
conversation with Jake not long ago. I had exactly the same conversation, because I'm one of those people now that I would consider me able to catch myself in a situation. So if I'm doing a certain thing or saying a certain thing or acting a certain way, I'll try and unpick it myself before I have to go to somebody else to try and unpick it for me. And we were talking around that whole sort of approach, and he just sort of said, like, you should be proud of the work that you've done in the last 12 months to actually be able to catch yourself in those situations, because I've never been able to do it.
yeah.
And I know my own shit, like I know when to call it out. So it's that opportunity, those lessons, those skills, you don't get them, unfortunately. Sometimes you have to suffer in order to really gain valuable, palpable skills that will serve you well in the future. And it's a silver lining at the end of the day. Like, it's not always a waste. There is something to gain from nearly every situation. You just have to find it.
Beautiful
Find
lessons. Like,
it.
oh,
I know.
I would say 2023 was probably the hardest year of my existence so far.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, like there's been, I'm sure there's a lot of things that will come my way in the next few years, but like, it's like you said, Jade, it's teaching you lessons, and it's building that armor and that strength, and you have those tools, and you know, you just have to be thankful for everything that
Yeah.
comes your way
Yeah.
each year, and just take that with you going into a new year. I think there was this quote where it's like, the water is the water, or the rain, or the storms from this year is planting the seeds for
For
2024.
next year.
That's what it's all
Yeah.
about, really. So
1000%.
yeah,
But yeah, no, love this catch up.
yeah, and
I
just
actually really loved it. We needed it.
like, thank you guys so much for listening to all the podcasts and
Mhm.
sharing us on your stories, and yeah, just being there, like, you've made the podcast what it is.
Mhm.
And be sure to have a listen over your favorite podcast this year, because
Yeah.
my top podcast on Spotify was ours. Yes, I listened to my episodes back, and sometimes I might listen to them 3 or 4 times. Like,
Yes.
a few that I
Yes.
listened back. I think I listened back to Paul Standell's one the other week. It
Mhm.
was like a year, and I'm gonna listen to a few back, because I'm like, there's so many nuggets in there. I'm like, they're actually so
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't my own horn, like,
No,
but I
no, but really,
love because you
it's
forget some of the things they said. And you're like, oh,
yeah.
class.
Yeah. We're not just trying to help you guys as well. This is definitely for our benefit as well. Like, literally. But
um,
just seeing how many people were actually sharing our podcast as a top, like we were up there with Say More, we were up there with
I
Bikini in
know.
the Brain. And I was
I
like,
know. I was like, little old us with those podcasts. Oh my God, I will take it.
yeah,
But we have so
take
much
it,
to
man.
come in next year. We have a couple of
Yes.
names that we've lined up. One name that agreed, but we're hoping to get him on before Christmas, but it's
Yes.
looking like probably the new year. You just got to keep on nudging. It will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, guys, just stay tuned, because there's a lot coming, a lot more conversations. There's obviously the Arnolds in March, so we'll be doing
Yes.
reviews for that, predictions. We might get a few more of listeners on to do all that, and yeah, just lots more to come.
Loads more plans. We're itching with a few things, aren't we? So yeah, stay
Yeah,
tuned. Stay tuned. There are going to be big things coming from us, we promise.
so excited. And
Yeah.
have a lovely Christmas, guys. Make sure to share this episode on your story, comment, let us know your thoughts, interact. We love to hear it. Message us on Instagram. We love chatting back and
Yes.
forth.
As you can tell.
Yeah, we love making friends with the listeners and you guys that
Mhm.
support. And of course, if you've got any guys or girls that you want to come on the podcast, like, let us know. Video
Mhm.
suggestions that you want us to kind of talk through. We'd be more than happy to cover anything. Like, your feedback is really important to us. So
Yeah.
yeah, do
Yeah.
get it over, and wishing you all a very happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
We'll be back in the new year. It's actually kind of crazy saying that. Like,
I
what?
know, literally, we will be
What?
back in a whole new
21st
year.
December. I want to record another one. But we'll be back
Maybe.
here. Thank you so much, guys, for listening this far. We love you so much. And
Yes. Thank you, guys.
yeah.